You're listening to Two Guys Talking Wine with Michael Pinkus and André.
Hello, Michael.
André, how are you? I can't see you. I'm in the dark here.
I mean, you're still in the middle of nowhere, Italy. The internet has been a little
Italy.
spotty.
Actually, that's what it's called. Here it is called the nowhere.
Oh, yeah. You know, you have an Italian girlfriend, and I can just picture her shaking her head every time you do your Italian accent, because you do the thing with your hand, too.
I did. Yes, I did. And you can't even see me, but you know I did it. Which is funny.
I've got to tell you, there's not a lot that makes me miss my time in the newsroom, working at News Talk 1010, but the past 45 days, I don't think I've ever seen anything in my entire professional career that could have prepared us for let's just call them the radical changes coming out of Washington.
Like, okay, so I know we're not a political podcast, so, and we try to not get into the politics of the world. Let's start there.
Well, we've gotten a few emails in the past. I think the reality is we have quite a few conservative listeners to the podcast. I am 100% not a conservative and don't mind voicing my opinion, but I do think that the impact that what's happening south of the border is having on the industry that we love, on the region that we love, and frankly, you being in Italy, like, there is going to be far-reaching consequences to what's happening in the United States, and I think it's something we need to address.
Well, it is. The Europeans, for lack of a better term, are shitting bricks over here. They don't know what's going on. I'm reading things that the Orange Pumpkin wants to crash our economy, and then they can walk in and take us over, and it'll take anywhere from 14 to 18 months. And I'm talking Canada, of course. And that's why he's doing this. But on the other side of the coin, he's got his own people yelling at him, going, "You're going to crash our own economy while you're doing this." So there's a lot going on.
Yeah, it's the sort of thing where, even Canadian experts are saying that in a full-blown tariff war, we're not going to win. But when you start parsing it out, like, an economy isn't one big blob of money that moves. And especially in my entire lifetime, especially since the 1980s, like, we live in a global economy. And the things that I'm reading are things like tariffs on the auto sector, things on auto parts. Like, I was seeing that the price of an automobile in the United States might go up $12,000 to $14,000 just because of the taxes. The reality is the Detroit car makers have a very long history in Canada. These industries are integrated. You can't just flip a light switch and move a factory from Oshawa or Oakville to the United States. Like, these corporations are global corporations that have benefited from cheaper Canadian labor for their entire existence. And I've seen some experts say that if these tariffs go ahead, you're not going to see the desired result of manufacturing move to the United States. You're probably going to see one of these companies disappear and go out of business.
Yeah, that's the big point here. And then I know the Liberals they just put in Mark Carney.
Yeah, Mark Carney.
Mark, not Art. Yeah. So, as a finance guy, I like the look of him. I know it's not your ilk, but I like the look of him. I think I'd want a finance guy in during a financial crisis. Seems like the guy ran the Bank of Canada, ran the Bank of England. Seems like the right thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, no, you know what? I don't have a lot of bad things to say about what's happening. I think, frankly, it's taken the Liberals way too long to realize the damage that their policies have been done. I'm very much a labor-oriented NDP card holder. I also consider myself an environmentalist, but I would have to say, like, the liberal green policy has done so much to stunt prosperity in this country. As much as I'm an environmentalist, I make responsible choices. I recycle, I do the best that I can to minimize my carbon footprint. But at the same time, it just feels like we've cut off our nose to spite our face. And on top of that, have done so at the expense of really fracturing this country by alienating Western Canada, which really relies on the development of natural resources. And frankly, natural resources that could build the prosperity of this nation.
So let's drill it down to the wine industry, because
Yes.
you're there, I'm not. And, you and I had an off-mic discussion probably on 3 or 4 days ago, which is usually how our podcasts go, unless we've scripted them.
Yeah, and you set me off for once. Usually I'm the one that sets you off, and you completely set me off. Should we go back and read the transcript a little bit?
I first want to know, let's go macro before we go micro.
Okay.
So I know that Canada, because I read a lot here. I watch a little bit of CBC, CTV, things like that. And so I want to know, first of all, how is the let's not buy American, let's stop American products, period, the end, going in Canada? Like, I hear that's a big push at the moment.
Yeah, it's a big push, and I think people are starting to make choices. And I think actually we're seeing quite a bit of compassion with it as well. Like, I'm in a position where I can afford to buy greenhouse-grown Ontario strawberries, which generally cost $6.99 for a clamshell, versus Californian strawberries, which can cost $1.99 for a clamshell. And I think what I'm seeing on a lot of social media is, and I've also been listening to a lot of talk radio these days as well, is if you see someone picking up an American-made product at the grocery store, you should mind your own business, because not everybody is in the same financial situation. Because let's be real, when it comes to groceries, the reason why U.S. products and Mexican products end up on our grocery shelves are because it is cheaper to produce there, on top of the fact that, we get winter here. And if you want to spend winter eating more than carrots, potatoes, and apples, you're going to have to get your produce from elsewhere. I know, like, my in-laws and, frankly, some of my older friends are looking to completely cut America out of their life. Like, I got a text message from a friend of mine who was just like, are there any Canadian alternatives to Google? And I mean, this goes back to what I said earlier in the podcast, is we are a global economy now. I rely on Google for advertising for mine and my wife's bakery in Hamilton. I spend money on advertising to make sure that people who are looking for bread products, pastry products in Hamilton, that they can find my bakery and they see me there. And yes, I know Google's supposed to be like a phone book. It doesn't work in a way that you can drive traffic to your business organically. You need to pay for advertising to do that, and we're not the only ones, right?
They just passed a law here in Europe, which is very interesting, that Google is no longer allowed to be as integrated as it is here. Meaning, when you Google something in Canada, it not only does it pop up, what you're Googling, but it'll then pop you up a link to the Google map. Well, they're not allowed to pop up to a Google map here anymore, which is really, I hate to say it, really annoying.
It's the sort of thing that it's really bothered me, and it's one of the things that's made me the most upset about the Trudeau government. Like, it's one of the things that I can't wait for a change in Ottawa to hopefully reverse this. Is, like, I understand the internet is still a very dangerous place. It is a place where assholes can remain anonymous, like expletive necessary. We don't really have an online code of conduct that applies to the internet to help protect people, help protect businesses. And, like, we're not just talking about children. Like, I'm currently working on a story for Canada Land that will be coming out soon, and it has involved me having to monitor certain municipal neighborhood groups. And there's people who are concerned for their safety in just voicing their opinion, because the internet is allowing people to organize mobs to harass people. But on the other hand, Justin Trudeau putting restrictions on news being able to access the internet. I think when the government really starts to dick with who has access to the internet as opposed to getting people to behave properly, it's not a good situation, and the people who are trying to access information suffer.
Yeah, the Europeans are they have put certain restrictions on certain things. It's interesting to use the internet here because it is quite different. Like every time you pop up a website, it asks you if you're okay with cookies. I don't know if you experience that in Canada when you go to a European website, like when you and I look at European wines and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, most websites have that warning now.
Yeah, it's because of the Europeans, right? The Europeans put that in place, and if you want to do any kind of business in Europe, you have to tell them you're tracking them. And as I said, Google has been almost disbanded here in that way. So now I'm going to go to I'm going to drill down a little bit more to one of our favorite places, of course. It's the LCBO. Now, yes. the alcohol has been removed from the shelf. Yes. U.S. alcohol, obviously. And how does that look, first of all? I've seen pictures, but I mean, like, are they leaving those spaces clear?
I'll be honest, I haven't set foot in an LCBO since this has taken place because I try to avoid the LCBO. I don't think I've made any secrets on that, but by the time we record our next episode, I will make a point of popping in there. But I have seen some photos from other people where it looks like they've either filled the shelf with other places. I walked through the path for in downtown Toronto, like the underground, the underground maze that connects all the finance buildings. And I did walk by one where I saw like they used to have quite a large selection of bourbon and American whiskey. And the shelves were blank with the sign up that basically says, we're doing this to protect Canada, support local, blah, 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 something along those lines. And yeah, I mean, it has been interesting to see. And like even taking a look at certain Facebook groups as well, people talking about this, it does drive me nuts to see the narrative in more than one place of people saying, well, what are we going to do? Ontario makes bad red wine, blah, 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 where it's just like, come on. Like it's been interesting to just see the full reaction from this.
So I just wrote an article recently for one of the magazines that I write for. And look, I'm not going to make every article about Ontario wine. You just can't do that. Look, I'm as patriotic as anybody. My original website was Ontario Wine Review. I still write a lot about Ontario wine, although I've been in Italy for a while, but I still write about it. I'm looking forward to Cuvée coming up on May 24th to taste what the winemakers think are going to be the best of Ontario, which always is kind of exciting to see what everybody thinks their best wine is. So I wrote something on Chile. I said, you want to screw it to the Americans, go to Chile. You get cheaper wine. You get, you're going to get that same kind of American flavor-esque, right? So there are different places to go than Ontario. I'm not turning people away from Ontario.
No, it's, you know what? It's sorry. Like, I think I've mentioned this on this podcast before, but it's a thing that I find is when I talk to someone who says that they don't like red wine from Ontario, I usually ask them to follow, well, what wines do you like to drink? And the answer is usually Chile, Argentina, United States, Italy. And it's just like, cool, you just don't like cool climate wines. To say Ontario wines are bad is a misnomer, but, if you like French wines, you'll probably like Ontario wines. If all you drink is, California fruit bombs, you're probably not going to dig our reds.
Look, if you the other thing is if you pair food, if you like to pair food, Ontario wines, cool climate wines are better for pairing, for the most part. Barbecue, I would go still California or Chile, but I mean, if you're pairing something more delicate, you're obviously
even
going
just the versatility.
The acidity is what does it.
Well, I did a steak salad on. Yeah, I'm back on salad. I did a steak salad on Friday night with a salsa verde salad is what it was called. So it was a very fresh salad with mint and parsley. And it was very herbaceous, and the steak was seasoned simply with salt and pepper. And I did have a bottle of red open. I can't remember what it was, but it just did not go. The red wine and the steak did not go. They tasted very bad together. So I opened a bottle of sparkling, a Hinterland Blanc de Blanc. Yep. Best pairing ever. Steak with the salsa verde, the great acid. It was magic.
Yep. I'm in Italy here, so a salad is called pasta. Anyway, so now let's go micro on this. So everybody
Are we going into our conversation now?
Yeah, now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of this whole thing. Everybody's just heard us talk politics. Obviously, they figured out what side of the political spectrum we're both on. But here we go completely micro. We've been down this road before in a different way.
Yeah.
Where everybody said, buy Canadian, you drink Canadian booze, blah, blah, blah. And we've been there before, and it hasn't been that long ago. It's 5 years ago, maybe, almost to the date. Like we are in March, right?
Yep.
So March 2020, we are all said, you can't get anything else. Start supporting your local winery, your local boozery, your local brewery, everything.
Yeah, it was protect the local business. Make sure your hospitality workers don't go out of business. Like. It was, it was a big, strong push to buy local, help support the local businesses. And this was, the LCBO had not pulled American products from the shelf. It was just a swell of patriotism for the sake of supporting your neighbor. You know, a nice like groundswell of goodwill that we had never seen before.
So now we've got a different kettle of fish, right? It's not support your neighbor as much as screw them. The Orange Pumpkin and the rest of the crew down there. Let's screw them by taking their booze off the shelf.
May I put like a slight asterisk behind what you said? It's
Sure.
not screw them, it's screw him. Because I know that we may have a few Americans listening to this as well. I've actually had a few American colleagues, because I've posted a little bit about this on my Instagram, not a whole lot, but I've had a few American colleagues, and I work for an NGO that has a headquarters in New York, and I've had Americans basically apologize for being American, and I've made it clear to my American friends and my American colleagues, we're not mad at Americans. We still love America. We know this isn't you. We know that not every American voted for Donald Trump. You know,
in fact, only 49% of you did.
But that's it, though. It's pretty clear. From my politics, I think I would have a hard time really associating with Americans who share Trumpian views. I have no issues hanging out with Canadian conservatives. Let me make that very clear. We can agree to disagree, but there's a certain line that's crossed with Donald Trump. Sorry, that's just a quick aside. But yes, I just wanted to say that it's not about screwing Americans as much as it is making sure that Donald Trump's plan backfires in the best way possible, as
Correct.
much as we can fight back.
So yes, it's a screw him. My favorite quote so far has been from his Treasury Secretary, who said something like, "Oh, America's not about buying cheap goods," and I'm like, really? That's what I think America's all about. Anyway, that's neither.
That's literally why the car industry's up here. The car industry's up here because our labor is cheaper than American labor.
So, and that's why you get things from China. That's why you get things from Mexico. That's why you buy Chilean wine and the cheapest wine on the LCBO shelf is Italian, right? It's like $7.25 for a bottle of Italian Cusimano something or other. Usually is what it is. But, I mean, it's because labor's cheaper, globalized markets, et cetera, et cetera. But is this going to work? Are we going to see, and I think this is what I posed to you. I said, and this sets you right off.
This is what you said to me. We have a unique opportunity to turn the public onto Canadian wine, in brackets, again. Is there someone you can think of to talk to find out how Ontario wineries are poised to take advantage of this? And I went off. I actually can't read much of my response because of the expletives in it.
Correct, and I was shocked by your response.
The long and the short of it is, I have had farts that the smells have lasted longer than the patriotism that lasted during the pandemic, and it's going to happen again here. And the main reason, frankly, is because of the LCBO.
The moment this is finished. When it finally finishes, I believe the LCBO will be the quickest people to put the booze back on the shelf. I think the only thing that stops us from putting the booze back on the shelf is if we send it back for a full refund. I have said that on Facebook. I understand that Somebody has then told me that we buy American booze on consignment. If anybody wants to confirm that, if anybody knows that for sure out there, I'd love to know. So please, reach out to one of us and tell us.
Yeah, from what I've read, some yes, some no.
But I mean, anything that we've paid for cash, we should just be sending that stuff back. Now that would show some kind of patriotism from the LCBO's side. Send it back. We can get it back at some point.
You know what would be a real show of patriotism from the LCBO would be if they promoted Ontario wine in a meaningful way and not just for that 1 month, one glossy catalog where, the handful of producers, and by the way, this is not a dig at the handful of producers who have marketing budgets. You've done a great job building your business where you can afford to do that. You play the game, and I want to be careful with that. With regard to that, as in no way am I taking digs at the larger producers in Ontario, but the reality is the LCBO catalog, the LCBO magazines are all pay for play, and I think people keep forgetting that. And unfortunately, I do think the LCBO should have an obligation to promote local on a regular basis, and it shouldn't just be money exchanging hands for who can afford the cover shot of whatever monthly magazine that is, because of the additional economic impact that the wine industry has. You should have a mandate to promote Ontario on a regular basis because it keeps the money in the province, but they don't, and they won't. The moment that this tariff war is over, it's going to be Josh and bread and butter on the front page of those magazines.
Yeah, I have no doubt. But while this goes on, and it's going to be prolonged for some reason, I have a feeling the Orange Pumpkin is going to keep it going as long as he can, and he's going to screw his own economy in the process. But while he's doing it, I want to see the LCBO actually step up and do something. But you're of the opinion that they're just not just the LCBO, but the public will not be behind this the whole way. Like theoretically, this could go 4 years, right? On again, off again. It'll mess with our economy. Obviously, this could go 4 years. But after, let's say Donald Moron goes out the door in 4 years, and his moron son, who says he's going to now go for is going to run for president in 2028. Let's say he loses so badly that it is now a Democratic run. So now the trade war ends, the booze comes back. Do we still have that patriotism towards Canadian, theoretical bourbons and scotches and whiskeys and all the other stuff towards our wines and beer? Or do we completely forget about it in a year and go back to, loving America again?
We're going to go back because we've already done it. We did it after the pandemic. People have short memories. I remember sitting in the newsroom during the pandemic and listening to people say, the world has changed forever. No, the world hasn't changed forever. People put away their masks. I think this winter, January, February, I haven't heard of more friends sick in my entire life. Granted, not with a very risky virus that could potentially kill people, but I was sick for basically the entire month of January, which is a combination of having a child in daycare and just going about my day-to-day life. And I am not casting shade on anyone. I don't wear a mask. I got rid of the masks as soon as I was able to. If anything, the mental feeling of just having that sense of normalcy was a benefit to my mental health. Should we be wearing masks? Yeah, probably. I mean, we sure as hell were a lot healthier even as things started to reopen post-pandemic. But yeah, things snapped back, and things snapped back very quickly, and they're going to snap back quickly after this as well. I don't think people genuinely care about buying local for this moment because it doesn't have an immediate impact on them. And I'm not saying that it's necessarily a good or a bad thing. It just is. That's what I predict is going to happen.
So I guess that's where I stepped in and I went, let's talk about it. And then let's put it out to all of you who's listening right now. You know how to get in touch with us. I'll even it'll be on our Facebook page as well. I'm going to get it out there as quickly as I possibly can. Tell us what you think is going to happen? Do you think we're going to snap right back like André does? Do you think maybe we're going to start supporting more local even when it's done? How is this gonna pan out? And we'll see who's right and who's wrong on this one.
André at AndreWineReview.ca is my email address, and you're Michael at MichaelPinkusWineReview.com. Now, we're not wrapping the podcast because that's usually the cue for when I wrap things. I actually want to put the question back to you. I think the other thing that's really bothering me is the lack of political will and the slow response from our governments. Is we've kind of heard a little bit of like a bit of a mumbling about getting rid of interprovincial trade barriers. If this threat of tariffs is real, the trade barriers between the provinces should have come down yesterday. Not today, not tomorrow, yesterday. We should have this country open up. The fact that we don't have free trade within our own country is another sign that we don't really care about buying local. Our politicians, the people we elect, should have taken care of this a long-ass time ago, and they have not.
You know, I always find that interesting because our very own, Bill of Rights and the other wonderful document that slips my mind right now says that all the goods should pass between the provinces freely, except for booze, which has been the one that hasn't been doing it. And I was shocked actually to hear that we still have tariffs on other provinces for other goods, because it still says right there that all of the goods should pass. And I'm like, aren't we the same country? I guess, maybe call me ignorant for not knowing that. But when I read that, and I read it, I think on a CBC thing, and I was like, are you kidding me? We still have barriers. I knew about the wine barriers. I knew about the booze
it's all agricultural. It's all
but I had no idea that it was there was other things that we didn't, trade between the provinces without tariffs.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. It is still surprising, and it's the sort of thing where I understand the concerns of wanting to protect your local economies, but it's the whole idea that we're at a two-way street, and frankly, we're at a fantastic point in history, and this is something I think about with how I grew up, right? Like, I think about road trips when I was a child. There was nothing more comforting on the side of a highway than seeing the Golden Arches, right? Or, a Canadian equivalent like Burger Baron or Tim Hortons before it turned to trash. It's just like you've built these brands where no matter where you are in the country, you can get a consistently good product, and they're safe places to go, even when you travel around the world. And I'll admit it, I'm guilty of grabbing an Egg McMuffin in a German airport or something once in a while, just if I'm hungry, because I know that I can get something safe. But we're at a cool time in history where the whole concept of craft beer, it's almost like they've leapfrogged the conglomerates. Is that if you're buying local, if you're getting from a mom and pop shop, the quality is on par or superior to the global manufactured good. So the point I'm trying to make with this is we're at a point where it would be a two-way street. I would love to easily get my hands on some beer brewed in Saskatchewan from both small and medium-sized brewers that I really dig. It's currently not legal to do that, and I don't understand why, because I'm sure that there are some expats from Hamilton or Toronto who are living in Regina or Saskatoon that would probably love to get their hands on some Collective Arts or some Merit or some Barrel Heart brewing that they would want to ship out there. It's not going to be a one-way street. Like, if you're that concerned about your economy, like, that's how a free market is supposed to work. And this is one where my NDP-ness, I guess, comes into question, is I do believe in a free market, just like I do in the wine industry in Ontario. If you make bad wine, find out how to make better wine. And if it means you have to invest a little bit more money, then okay, I know that there's challenges to do that. If you want to compete, find a way to compete. That's it.
Well, first of all, I'm glad to see that your hate on for Tim Hortons continues. I just want to remind all listeners out there, never make André a bad sandwich. And refuse to not make him a different one. Anyway,
That's not what happened, but pretty close.
So, I guess I still remain speechless that we do, like, kokanee beer came from the Okanagan, from what I understand. So it looks like the trade barriers came down, but I think it's just because one of the larger guys bought it and then started brewing it in Ontario. Is that what ends up happening, or does it become an import, or is somebody actually paying the tariffs to get that beer into the province? I guess I'm not up on the beer scene that way, and I also read about some really great spirits that are out west, and you and I tasted Bareface, which comes from out west. And just because Mark Anthony is throughout the country, maybe that's how they bring it in that way. But I find this country so mental in the ways that we're not allowed to intertrade those and people break it all the time. Let's be honest. If you do phone up Mission Hill and you want to get 12 bottles, they'll send it to you. So most of those wineries will send it to you. Anyway, they don't care.
Yep. I mean, yeah, there's that. Like it is completely ridiculous. So I guess this is going back to the original thesis. It's just like
it's a Wild West system that we have going on here. Some wineries will send, some people won't send. Ontario wineries, I'll tell you that they're afraid to send it. But, BC's like, oh, send it anyway. And then you phone up a BC winery and they're like, all right, we'll send it. No, we have no problem with that. We're just going to send it by this courier. Look for it,
So I guess this is going back to the original point. Is it's just like, I don't think Canadians have it in them to be this patriotic all the time. Like, I think it's an unnatural feeling for Canadians because, the fabric of this country is multinational. I think we've all been like looking out. It's frankly exhausting to be this patriotic all the time. And I mean, the other thing too is the Americans have been our friends and neighbors. At least for my entire life, I love visiting the United States, and you know what? Like, this is curtailing. Like, I love being able to hop over to Buffalo to do my Trader Joe's run, check out some of the local restaurants in Buffalo. I went to the Finger Lakes last spring. I loved it, but there's certainly no trips to the United States being planned right now, and it's really not meant to stick it to any of the great winemakers down in the Finger Lakes or to stick it to any of the local businesses in Buffalo that I like to frequent. But it's something that we have to do, if anything, to just, I live in Hamilton. There's a good chance that 9,000 people in this town are going to be unemployed because one man has decided to throw an international size temper tantrum.
As somebody who also is in the service industry for tourism myself, it'll be interesting to see how many Americans come over to our side. I don't think most Americans who travel are upset with us, so I don't see a curtail of Americans, but maybe they will. Maybe they'll not come here. Maybe they'll be told not to come. Maybe they'll make it more difficult to travel here. I don't know. It's going to be a very interesting summer. I think that you know what, their old saying, may you live in interesting times. I didn't want them to be this interesting.
No arguments here. So I think on that note, I'm André Prue from AndreWineReview.ca. You can email me, André at AndreWineReview.ca. For those of you who have complained about our politicalness, I'm not sorry about this episode.
I'm not sorry about this one either. I wanted to try and keep the politics down to a minimum, but you know what? The Orange Pumpkin really has brought it to the forefront. I don't think there is anything you can get away with, or you can that this hasn't touched. This really has hit a nerve, not just with Canadians. It's hit the nerve with Americans. It's hit a nerve around the world. I just was in Prima Toscana, and we had journalists from all over the world, and I don't think there was the first time he was in, everybody was like laughing. Now there's a concerned look on a lot of people's faces. I'm just saying that. I'm Michael Pinkus of michaelpinkuswinereview.com. Find me on most social media at The Grape Guy.
And support this podcast on Patreon, patreon.com/2guystalkingwine. You know, it does not take a lot of money to run this podcast, but we have had a few people. We've had some longtime supporters who have dropped off, which is not a big deal. We understand, like, people are watching their dollars, but if we could pick up a couple more patrons, it would really go a long way to making sure that we can keep the podcast sounding great.
So thank you very much for everybody who has supported us. If you have in the past, thank you very much, and we look forward to having you support us in the future. André, my time in Europe is coming to a close. We will be podcasting sometime in the middle of April in the same room, but I think the next one will also be from the road, and hopefully it'll be more about wine.
It will be more about wine and less about this. You've got some great interviews in the works, and we should have some time to get some translation done. So I'm looking forward to talking about Bordeaux.
Perfect. All right, André, as it always is, good night.
Thanks for listening. Please subscribe to Two Guys Talking Wine on iTunes.
Two Guys Talking Wine is produced by Adam Duran and Ken Little.